A lot of you probably know Christopher Hitchens. He is one of the probably the most widely known, this is controversial writers and critics in the media. He's just a tremendous writer. He's a great wordsmith. He is fabulous with the pen and is a wonderful presenter with his voice as well. He's probably best known for his work here in Vanity Fair as well as the Atlantic Monthly. He's a foreign correspondent and has written for more than 60 different countries. He's the only writer to have written since 2000 from Iran, Iraq, and North Korea. He's the author of many books. One of them, God is Not Great, How Religion Destroys Everything or Poisons Everything, is probably one of his most popular ones, and he's recently released his memoirs, Hitch 22. He was born in England. He's educated at both Cambridge and Oxford, holds honors degrees in philosophy, politics, and economics. He moved to the United States in 1981 and has worked as a book reviewer, a writer, a commentator, a critic, and a social intellect for many publications. When he comes up here, please give Christopher Hitchens a warm welcome.
Just before we stop on the virgin thing, if these poor fools had read the Talmud instead of the Quran, they'd know that they get 72 mothers-in-law as well.
Here's the great contradiction of being religious, and she really is exemplified in a very amiable way this evening. If you are a person of faith, then that's what you are a person of. Especially in Christianity and Islam, it's the strength of your faith that is your merit. It's your willingness to believe and to risk your life for it, no matter what. Do you affirm it? Yes, I do. How does it go? They say it 5 times a day. There is no God but God, and Allah is his messenger. You notice the first 4 words are exactly right. Yeah. Sorry, and Muhammad. There is no God but God, and Muhammad is his messenger. The first 4 words are exactly right. There is no God. So 5 times a day, millions of people around the world unknowingly speak 4 words of complete truth. Progress of a kind. But it's the faith that is the merit. What do they want evidence for? They're never going to get any evidence for that. The merit is the faith. So as soon as they say, and by the way, it is possible to make night journeys to Jerusalem on a horse, the faith shrivels. It shrivels. And Christianity has given itself away repeatedly on this. It now says, we didn't used to think there was a Big Bang, but now we realize there was one. Reads a lot like Genesis when you read it backwards. Plagiarism, pure and simple. They do it all the time. But then now they're pimping off the back of medical science and doing extraordinary moments in surgery and surgical intervention to do the near-death experience racket. This is a familiar thing. All these things will yield to properly controlled scientific investigation. But the things that we know already are miraculous enough.
Thus, when the local prince of the church, who I was sorry to miss on Tony's show, Cardinal Archbishop George Pell, takes leave to tell me, and is going to tell you under this roof, that in his own words, without God we are nothing. My reply is, Your Eminence, please don't talk to me in that tone of voice. I'm not a slave, and I'm on the side of anyone who is in their emancipation. And it's the mind-forged manacles that are often the hardest to break. I'm sorry to tell the Cardinal Archbishop, and I wish I could say it to his face, I have to some of his colleagues, as you might say, that he's wrong twice. He's first wrong in his concept of a deity, in other words, as someone without whom we would be nothing. And he's wrong, second, to declare that we are worthless without agreeing with his concept of that concept. And I demand to know how he knows. His Eminence is claiming to know more than a primate can possibly know, and he's showing that he knows much less than most primates probably should.
And then I get told that atheism is Nazism. The Pope does it today, getting off the fucking plane in Edinburgh to talk to the Queen. And Shmuley doesn't exactly not say it. Now, on this, because of the totalitarians of the 20th century, Adolf Hitler is the only one he mentioned more than twice. Because I can't do them all, though, believe me, I will if you press me. I'll just take the Führer. My former colleagues and ancestors at the New School produced a very comprehensive edition of Mein Kampf, the hard book to get. They wanted everyone to read it, and I have several copies of the edition they brought out in 1940. Just slightly too late, actually, in the hope of warning people. I think it's at the closing pages of chapter 2 that Adolf Hitler says that his work against the Jews is done on the direct instruction and inspiration of Almighty God. It's certainly a trope that's repeated throughout the book. And there was no reason for someone brought up in Catholic Austria, Bavaria, not to think that. Centuries of Christian instruction in the poisonous nature of the Jewish people, the verminous character of the Jewish people. An uncontroversial remark. The Vatican at that point was willing to ban books by Evelyn Waugh and Graham Greene. Say nothing, books about evolution and the Big Bang. They were invited to ban Mein Kampf. Did they? No, they didn't. Instead, the Vatican made its first ever political treaty with the Third Reich, exchanging complete control over education on their part for complete control over the rest of the state by the Nazi Party. What did it say on the belt buckle of every single member of the Nazi army? What did it say? Gott mit uns. Do you want me to translate? It says God on our side, in German. If you took your oath to the Führer, how did it have to begin? I swear in the name of Almighty God, my undying fealty to Adolf Hitler. Shmuley, I won't take it from you. I'm sorry. I don't want to spoil a relatively friendly evening either. Don't you dare bring this up again. I can take a lot. Read any history of fascism in the 20th century and take out the word fascist from any history that's remotely objective, including much written by Christian historians, and just put in, instead of the word fascist, extreme Catholic. You don't need to change another word. To say this was secular is just getting history completely wrong. To say it's atheist is a deliberate, conscious insult, and I won't have it. So, now you know how rude I can be.
Though I think in all cases it's a big mistake to think that your own cause or your own country or your own side has God in its corner. For one thing, it commits the sin of pride, which I know you've been warned against, what the Greeks call hubris. It is probably better, as Abraham Lincoln said, at a time when two sets of Christians were fighting over whether slavery was Christian or not, to decide the future of this union. Abraham Lincoln, who was also likewise not a Christian but a deist, if he was anything, said it might be more useful to find out if we are on God's side than whether he's on ours. But the temptation to enlist the cause of a good God is very strong. Indeed, there are many people in the world today, they're well known as jihadists, Muslim fundamentalists, people who want to kill, really do seriously want and intend to kill everyone in this room, who get the energy they've got and are willing to give their lives because they are so sure that God is with them. And if you want to believe that God intervenes on one side or another and that God takes a hand in human history and human affairs, you have to grant it to them too. I don't know whether you're ready to do that. Or you'd have to say, no, it's only true when we say so, which I think would be, wouldn't it, a rather unsatisfying argument. I'll take the Christians nor the Jews but the Muslims. Excuse me, neither the Christians nor the Muslims but the Jews, who say they have a covenant with God, whose testament we Christians, we Western civilization, Christians include in the Holy Book. Those who claim to have met God, or whose leader met God face to face in the Sinai Peninsula, to have received the law, to have had a direct revelation of morality from him, to have a special covenant. Now, let me just say briefly what the problem with that has been for the Jewish religious leadership. About 10 years before I was born, about 50 to 60% of the Jewish people of Europe were put to death in disgusting ways by mass murder, gassing, immolation. In Christian Europe in the middle of the 20th century. And many people wondered how God could permit this to a people who he had made a special relationship with. And many people left the synagogue as a result. They stopped going. The Jewish people are in their majority now post-religious, secular, very largely for this reason. And some rabbis were bold enough to say, no, there is a reason for this. You fell away from God and you forgot Israel, you forgot Jerusalem. It's a punishment for exile. It's a punishment for inattention to the covenant. Many people who'd seen their children burned alive said, I'm not listening to this. I'm leaving the religion. And many rabbis went quiet, thinking perhaps they shouldn't come up with any too instant explanation for such a fantastic human disaster and human crime. And they waited, and then the Israelis won a war in 1967, which got them back control of the holy places in Jerusalem. And then the rabbis blew the ram's horn again and said, no, we should have waited. Now we see the finger of God. It was all to drive us back to Palestine, where we should have always have been, and to make us the owners of Jerusalem. Now we see what the design was. Well, I dare say you read the papers and watch the news. There isn't a single Israeli now who isn't wondering whether the victory in that war and the conquest of those holy places wasn't a disaster, hasn't led them into a terrible trap of endless war and confrontation in the Middle East, where their own hubris, their own occupation of other people's territory and holy places has led to a terrible impasse. There.
I think that we're probably doomed to some kind of relativism, or perhaps better say, approximation. I mean, who's going to tell me, here's a law that's absolutely true and will hold good for all time, and that's been proclaimed scripturally? Well, we might say, thou shalt not kill. I mean, it would be probably inevitable we'd have to start with that. But it doesn't say, in Hebrew, thou shalt not kill. It says, thou shalt do no murder. And everybody knows that there's a real difficulty in deciding when killing is murder, and that the situational ethics of this are very complicated, but are common to all times and places. So different standards prevail at different times and places, but that argument is an open-ended one and will remain so. I'm rather glad, as a matter of fact, from the point of both moral and intellectual and ethical exercise, that you can't just tell someone one thing, and that that's right and that's true for all time, there's nothing to argue about. That's why I object to the idea of commandments in the first place. Morality is not learned by orders. Okay, it's acquired by experience, by